In the heart of Manhattan, beneath the noise of traffic and the rush of modern life, lies the ghost of a palace New York chose to erase. Not abandoned, not lost to fire or war, destroyed by decision. In 1963, one of the grandest structures ever built in the United States was dismantled stone by stone as if it had never mattered at all. Most people pass through its replacement every day without realizing what once stood there, and once you see it, you can never unsee the loss. At the dawn of the 20th century, New York was not yet the unquestioned capital of the modern world. It was ambitious, restless, and determined to announce itself on the global stage. That ambition took physical form in Pennsylvania Station. Designed by the renowned architectural firm McKim, Mead and White, and inspired by the baths of Caracalla in ancient Rome, the station opened in 1910 as a triumph of stone, steel, and light. Imagine arriving by train and stepping into a hall so vast it felt sacred. Marble floors stretched endlessly beneath your feet. Colossal Corinthian columns rose upward, supporting ceilings so high they swallowed sound. Sunlight poured through towering glass arches, illuminating travelers like figures in a cathedral nave. This was infrastructure built with reverence, transportation treated as ceremony. Penn Station was more than a transit hub. It was a civic statement, funded by the powerful Pennsylvania Railroad, meant to symbolize permanence, confidence, and arrival. To many immigrants, it was the first interior space they ever saw in America, a silent promise carved in stone that they had reached something great. And yet, beneath its beauty, forces were already shifting. By the mid-20th century, rail travel declined, profits fell, and the value of Manhattan real estate began to eclipse the value of monumentality. Quietly, language around the station changed. Newspapers stopped calling it grand. Instead, they called it inefficient, outdated, excessive. Still, the structure stood strong. The stone had not failed, the columns had not weakened, but something else had changed. New York's idea of progress. And once that idea shifted, the fate of the palace was sealed. What happened next would shock a city, ignite a preservation movement, and leave a scar still felt today. But before the walls came down, something else happened first, something far more subtle and far more disturbing. That story begins in the shadows of the station itself. Before Penn Station was destroyed, it was first diminished, and this is the part of the story few people talk about. The palace was not taken down in a single dramatic moment. Instead, it was slowly stripped of its soul, piece by piece, until the public no longer remembered what had been taken from them. By the 1940s and 1950s, the great halls were no longer allowed to breathe. Kiosks were installed where sunlight once pooled across marble floors. Temporary walls cut through open space. Advertisements crept up the columns. Windows were blocked. Staircases that once felt ceremonial were partially sealed or rerouted. The cathedral began to feel cramped, dim, and ordinary, not because it had been designed that way, but because it was being made to feel that way. Photographs from this period tell a quiet but devastating story. In earlier images, travelers look small beneath soaring arches, dwarfed by a structure that demanded awe. In later images, the same stone pillars are barely visible, swallowed by clutter and commercial signage. The palace had been visually downgraded. And once people stopped seeing it as extraordinary, the unthinkable became possible. Behind the scenes, the Pennsylvania Railroad was struggling. rail was losing to cars and airplanes, and the land beneath Penn Station was suddenly worth more than the building above it. Air rights, an invisible concept to most people, became the key. The plan was simple and ruthless. Demolish the station, build Madison Square Garden and office towers above the tracks, and keep trains running underground. In 1963, the demolition began. There was outrage, but it came too late. Day after day, workers dismantled what had taken thousands of artisans years to build. Pink granite columns were smashed. Sculpted stone was hauled away as rubble. The great waiting room, the one that had felt like Rome reborn, was reduced to dust. Architectural historians watched in disbelief as a masterpiece vanished in real time. One critic wrote that New York was entering the age of the small. Another famously said, "We will probably be judged not by the monuments we build, but by those we have destroyed." And then it was gone. In its place rose a low-ceilinged, fluorescent-lit maze, functional, efficient, and utterly forgettable. The contrast was so severe that commuters immediately felt it, even if they couldn't articulate why. Something essential had been removed from the experience of arrival. You no longer entered New York, you were processed by it. Yet even in destruction, Penn Station refused to disappear completely. Whispers began to circulate, claims that parts of the original structure still existed below ground, that massive stone walls, old corridors, or sealed archways remained hidden beneath the modern complex. No official map confirmed it, no clear denial ever put the rumors to rest. And that raises the final unsettling question. Was the palace truly destroyed or merely buried? After the dust settled, something strange happened. The destruction of Penn Station did not end the story, it ignited it. Almost immediately, Americans began to realize what they had lost. The outrage that failed to save the building succeeded in changing the country. Within just a few years, New York established its Landmarks Preservation Commission. Across the nation, historic preservation laws followed. Penn Station became the sacrifice that awakened a movement. But its legacy did not fade, it deepened. Architectural fragments began to resurface in unexpected places. An original Penn Station column now stands quietly in a Long Island park. Ironwork and stone details appeared in private collections, museums, and storage facilities, divorced from the context that once gave them meaning. Like artifacts from a fallen civilization, they hinted at a structure too grand to be fully erased. Even more unsettling are the unanswered questions. Engineering records from the station's final years are surprisingly thin. Detailed documentation of its deepest foundations is incomplete. Photographs of the transition period from palace to pit are oddly scarce for a city that documented nearly everything. It is not a conspiracy. Historians openly acknowledge the gaps, but the silence is real. Today, millions pass through the modern station without ever seeing daylight. Few realize that they are moving beneath the footprint of something once monumental. Beneath the concrete and steel, some believe remnants still exist, sealed corridors, massive walls, forgotten spaces that no longer fit the city above them. Whether true or not, the idea persists because the loss was never fully processed. Penn Station represented more than architecture. It embodied a philosophy that public spaces could be beautiful, that permanence mattered, that arrival should inspire awe. Its destruction marked a turning point, a shift toward speed, efficiency, and disposability. We gained square footage, but we lost grandeur. And perhaps that is why the story still haunts New York, because deep down, the city remembers, not clearly, not comfortably, but enough to feel the absence. A palace once stood here. and the fact that it could be destroyed so completely, by choice, forces us to ask an uncomfortable question. If something this great could vanish, what else have we already forgotten?